Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Compile by Greater Than Games. Compile is a two-player lane battling game. You're going to start the game by drafting from a whole variety of attributes. So right now, for example, I've already done this pre-drafting for the sake of showing you this. We have Plague, Death, and Spirit facing off against Darkness, Speed, and Fire. But you can also see there's Water, Gravity, Metal, Life, Light, and Psychic, and so that's going to give us 12 different attributes, effectively, that you're going to use any 3 of them to build your particular deck. Now, the name is just a name, but past that, there's also various things that they do, and you can see that on the bottom of each card. So I can see that Death is good at deleting and drawing, Spirit is good at flipping, shifting, and drawing, and Plague is good at force discard and flip. Meanwhile, Fire over here is great for discarding for effect, which can be very satisfying, but each of these effectively have their own thing that they're better at. Now, a lot of these words won't mean a lot to you your first game. Honestly, if you dive into your first game, I highly recommend you just give each player 3 attributes, take their little deck of cards, you can have 18 cards, 6 from each attribute, shuffle them together, and just start playing. It might result in a less planned experience, but the end result is you will have a much better idea of how everything comes together by the time you're done with your first game, and you can dive into your second game actually starting to draft with a whole lot more insight as to what it is you're trying to do by building your deck. Now, to that end, the way that's going to work is when you are drafting, one player will choose 1 attribute, the next player will choose 2, the first player will go back to choosing 2 more, and then the other player will choose 1. So you have a kind of reverse snake draft, 1, 2, 2, 1, resulting in each player having 3 of their attributes and now a shuffled deck. So, what is it you're trying to do? Well, you're trying to compile. That's what the game is called. You're trying to compile your 3 attributes. I'm trying to compile Plague, Death, and Spirit. And in order to compile, what you need to do basically 2 things, or 2 things at the same time, effectively. You need to have at least 10 strength in a column. So for example, if I have this card face down over here, that's a 2 in this column. It's adding 2 to the strength. Meanwhile, we have Death over here with a 4 on this side, on the front side of the card. We have a 4 for Death, and that adds 4 to this column. Once you have a total of 10 in any one column, and you have more than your opponent, you will now be able to compile that column on your next turn. You see, your turns basically consist of only 1 action each turn. You can either play a card, which is going to be the most common action you take in the game, or you can refresh to your hand size of 5, which you can do before you're down to 0. If you're at 0, you have to do it, but you can do whatever you want, but obviously the more often you're doing it, the more flexibility, but the less actual force, the less cards you're getting down to the table. And then this compile, which is mandatory if you are able to do so. And again, the requirements for compiling are having 10 in a column and having more than your opponent on that exact same column. Which means if I see that you have 10, there's 2 ways to stop you from compiling. Well, technically 3, because there are some cards in some decks that say you can't compile next turn, but avoiding those for a second, the 2 most common ways to stop you compiling are playing an action that will in some way reduce your total below 10, or alternatively playing something on my side that brings the total above 10. Either of those 2 will stop you from being able to compile. Now, once you compile, the game is still going on. In fact, this column is still in contention. If you actually get to a point where you can compile, you've done this column, you now only need those 2, but I'm still fighting you for this column, which means you still need to put up a fight over here, either trying to lower my score or put your own cards in that column. And at least the good news is if you compile a column you've already compiled, which can happen, especially when you try to stop me, you do get a small reward, not nearly as big, but the main reward honestly is stopping your opponent from winning, but you get a small little perk being able to take cards from their deck away from them. That's the basic idea of the game. Now, some intricacies around playing cards, which is the only thing we haven't talked about. Looking at my hand of cards over here, when you have a card, there's basically 3 parts to the card. In fact, we have a card in the Spirit column over here that's going to have all 3 parts. And the relevance of that is when you play cards, you're going to overlay everything except for the top part. So as I play this card right now, I've covered the bottom 2 parts of this card if I play this card to this column. And those 3 parts over here, the top part is usually going to give you a general ongoing ability. You can play cards in any lane. That's important because of the fact that normally you can only play a card to its matching line. So having this Spirit card in play gives me a lot of flexibility to where I can actually play cards, because usually the trick around that is playing cards face down. You can play a card face down in any lane and tentatively alternatively flip it later, but right now you do have that limitation in play. So the top part gives you a kind of ongoing ability. The middle part is the main effect. That effect will take place either when you play the card, or alternatively when you flip the card, or even when you uncover a previously covered card. Whenever you reveal that effect, effectively, you're going to get that middle area. And then the bottom area usually has either a start or end of turn effect, although there can be others, and those will be checked, again, as long as it's an uncovered card. So right now we can see over here, at the start of my turn, I either discard one card or I flip this card. Meaning effectively this card over here, while it does let me play cards in any lane, until I cover this card, I have to be mindful that there's a cost to having it in play. Those are the three sections of the card, and by now you probably know basically everything you need to know outside of keywords. You can only play a card to its matching lane, unless you play it face down. There are a lot of effects that will flip cards. This goes back to when you're drawing decks at the beginning. I can see over here, Spirit will let me flip, shift, and draw. Death will let me delete and draw, and Plague will let me force discard and flip, giving me a variety of tools that my combined deck will have against my particular opponent. Combining those decks is where the fun of this game is going to come in, and I guess this is a good time to segue into the review. What do I like, dislike, what do I like, not like, and can see others not liking about Compile? There's a lot to like over here. First of all, I'll start with the basics. This is a lane battling game, a two-player lane battling game where you're fighting for control over multiple lanes. I tend to appreciate that genre to begin with. I remember playing Battle Line back in the day and loving it. Battle Line was possibly my first lane battler, and I've always enjoyed the genre ever since. There are better and worse games in the genre, but I've always enjoyed the simplicity of you and I are fighting it out over a few different lanes, trying to figure out where to put our energy and our forces, and then obviously the unique aspects that any lane battler brings to the table. So the fact that it's a lane battler, already starting off well. In other fun aspects, we have glittery cards, a small little foil effect to each card that is makes it not dissatisfying to look at. I should note the playmat is not included in this small little box. That's a separate accessory. It should be clear it's not included in this box, but you don't need a playmat to play the game well. The playmat is definitely an extra. It is a nice extra though. Past that, the game is incredibly easy to learn. You can teach somebody the game. Again, you hand them any three attributes, just have them completely pick. You just pick any three attributes. You have no clue what's going on. Ooh, fire, darkness, and light sound good? Great, combine them. And then from there, you can get people up and running in 3 to 4 minutes easily. There's only 3 things you can do on your turn. You have one action. You either play a card, you refresh your hand, or you compile. That's all there is to it. You need another minute and a half to explain the intricacies of those rules, and the rest you can tackle as you go. Like, I've already taught you the full game, and honestly, half of that you don't need, well, mostly the full game. There's an element of control. We're not getting into it. You can skip it in the bit, and they recommend skipping it in your first games. But either way, most of what I taught you, I don't even have to teach people as we start playing. I can just tell you the basics and then handle the rest as we start taking actions. This is an easy game to learn. It's an easy game to teach. It plays in like 20 to 30 minutes, making it an appropriate filler game, and it gives you a ton of variety in the experience because you have all these different decks you can have, and I hope they come out with expansions with more decks, but overall, even right now, with 12 decks, gives you a decent amount of ways to mix things up, as well as an actual intricacy of competing with your opponent. If I see that you're engaging in a flip deck, you're trying to pull things that will flip, I'll probably want to have more flipping on my end as well to counter all the flipping that you do to me. So there's a lot of intricacies in the drafting as well as the variety of the experience, and like I said already, it's a lane battler, which already has me started off well with it. The different combinations of cards is going to be incredibly satisfying to experiment with, because each one brings its own unique flavor to the game that you have, and there's definitely overlaps. We have draw, flip, and shift, and we have flip, shift, and draw, which are basically a similar structure, just, more or less of one thing. We have flip, top deck play, and draw. Trying to mess with top deck play could be an entirely different experience, especially when you combine it with other things. Top deck play, a little more draw, some flipping. There's a lot of combinations going on, and it's fairly tactical as far as the options on the table in front of you. You're looking at a handful of cards, figuring out which cards to play face down, which abilities to capitalize on, when to push the offense, when to push the defense, when to draw back to a full hand to give you more agency, versus when to play down to the last card to optimize and maximize around how much you're getting on the board versus the actions you're taking. There's a lot going on as far as the general strategy of the game has a lot to it, and the variants of the cards behind it give it a lot more as well. The fact that you can refight over closed lanes, I like that aspect. In many lane battlers, it's about who wins any one lane. This is a little different because you have to win each of the 3 lanes at any point in time, but if you win your speed lane here, I'm still fighting over here, which gives an extra element that you don't get in a lot of lane battlers. The fact that you've won it, but it still is in contention for the other player to go through. As far as what I don't like about the game, first of all, it definitely will reward players that know the game a lot better. Because this is a game that has a whole bunch of decks, meaning you don't just have 18 cards in play, you have whatever the total is, 18 times, you have 48 cards, is that 36, 72, you have 72 cards in play, and learning the ins and outs of each deck will happen after a few plays. You'll start getting better at remembering, oh, a fire deck does this, and there'll be a lot of discarding, and you'll be able to like completely clear a lane if you have that deck. There's all these things you can do, and learning the ins and outs of knowing what to expect will definitely give players a leg up. The good news is this gap is not super wide. I mean, this is the kind of thing that any player who's played the game like 4 or 5 times will already have a good understanding of things, but there certainly is an edge to a player who knows the game better than the others. Additionally, luck of the draw is very much a factor here. For all the strategy that's going on here, there is a lot of strategy. Top decking the right cards at the right time is just as much a part of the game experience as it is to know how to optimally play the hand you have. Pulling into if somebody else starts off with a 5, 4, and 2 and can immediately ramp up winning a lane, what you draw or don't draw can absolutely be the difference between winning or losing. There's definitely luck as much as there is strategy in the experience. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, it can feel very easy to fall behind on a lane. Going back to what I just mentioned, that 5-4-2 aspect. If somebody managed to get 2 strong cards into a lane, you might just be looking at a losing lane. And the good news is that's not the end of the game. You'd have to lose all lanes that way, but it can be fairly deflating at first to immediately. Like, you can walk into a game and within a few turns be like, well, I just lost a third of the game. Don't get me wrong, you put your energy elsewhere and you can come back from that, but it can certainly be deflating to engage with. Outside of that, the game definitely is themeless, at least to me. Like, there is a theme going on here. There's like, if you read the rulebook, there's something about post-apocalyptic, machines taking over. I don't even know. There's a theme here, but ultimately this is about the cards. If you're here for the theme, I don't think the theme comes through in the gameplay. As far as final thoughts on Compile, I overall really enjoy this game. This has been a lot of fun going through the different combinations of decks, trying to figure out what I like combining. I'm still not sure. Like, I really like Fire, the discard for effects, a lot of fun, but honestly, just being able to flip cards is very satisfying. Controlling the lane, drawing, all of the things are fun, and trying to experiment with different combos. I'm still at the point of experimentation with this. I'm still at the point where I'm trying to figure out different sets of cards and how I enjoy watching them come together. But I've had a lot of fun with this so far, and I do hope they make more content for the game, although there is the downside that more content, more variability will also increase that difference of how well a player who knows the game well versus how much longer it takes somebody else to catch up. So that is the downside of more content, although I still kind of do hope there's more content for the game. This is a lot of fun, it's a lot of variability, there's a lot of strategy, and it does so in a game that's easy to teach, easy to play, short to play, and also great to travel with. Small box size over here, and you could probably even put it, if you want to just, well, I guess, no, I was going to say you can probably make it even smaller, but I do like the drafting aspect of the game, and I wouldn't want to make it smaller. Overall, this is a 4 out of 5 for me, a very solid game that I've had having a lot of fun going through. If you're looking for other game recommendations, definitely check out Air, Land, and Sea, possibly my favorite lane battling game that I've ever played. To me, that is a near perfect combination of the gameplay, the experience, the fact that you can retreat from a losing battle, and that's a big part of the strategy, and the fact that there's only 18 cards in the whole game, making it so that you can play the game 3 times and know as much as any player who has ever played the game knows about the experience. And then if you want an oldie but a goodie, I mentioned it already in this video, but check out Battleline. Battleline to me still holds up as an excellent lane battling experience, one of the first games that popularized it, at least that I'm aware of, and one that still holds up as far as the gameplay experience to this day. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.